Honorable members of Parliament, it's a great honor to be joining you for this very important conversation, especially regarding issues in the West African region, which needs to be considered in terms of drug policy, the drug policy conversation. There's need for us to consider alternatives to punitive drug policies if indeed we are interested in achieving the sustainable goals by the year 2020. I'm sure you all agree with me that with the kind of policies we currently have and the challenges that confronts us today, we cannot continue to use yesterday's methods in terms of policies to address issues of today. What we need to do or what we need to consider is to modernize and make sure that our approaches are responsive to current trends. And by that, I mean current policies in the region have been focused predominantly and rooted in punitive criminal justice response at the expense of human rights, public health, and more resources lately have been diverted into policing more than ever. And yet, today, we still see a lot of people who are in prison for producing drug or trafficking or selling or using drug, yet the problem still remains the same. If you look at the 2021, that's 2021 World Drugs Report, the figures shows that it's never reducing, it's ever increasing, and that means that we are absolutely doing something that is wrong, and so we need to reconsider our direction. And by that, I mean policy changes that can help us address most of the challenges that we are facing currently with drug policy. Why is it important for us to begin to consider alternatives in terms of drug policies? Because there are a lot of challenges with the current regime because recent overviews in terms of international evidence regarding the effects of the current policies is that the level of drug use in our country is not directly related to the toughness of how a country's law enforcement against drug possession. That is, no matter how tough you are on drugs, it doesn't have a relationship with whether people will use drugs or people will still traffic drugs or not. Otherwise, countries that barely have very tough regimes would have seen zero incidents of people using drugs or trafficking in drugs. And so that clearly tells us that the punitive nature of our policies do not necessarily have a bearing on the outcome of how people will use drugs or people will engage in drugs. Now, we also know that drug use increases with a lot of health risks because people who use drugs are exposed to a lot of health risks. And these health risks are being complicated as a result of the criminalization mechanisms we have always used over time. In 2010, the UN Special Rapporteur on the rights of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health concluded that criminalizing drug use increased the risk of ill health and drug-related health problems among people who use drugs. And the report further said that higher rates of legal repression have been associated with some high prevalence of HIV/AIDS among people who inject drugs. And so without increasing the prevalence of injecting drug use, out of the fear of arrest and punishment, individuals may adopt riskier practices such as sharing of needles, injecting supplies, and then maybe hurriedly preparing the drug to use because they are afraid that they can be arrested by the police. And that sometimes leads to overdose, deaths, vascular accidents, and infections, and a number of things among these group of people. So it is important that as a country or as a region, we begin to look at some of these implications as to some of the methods and policies that we have always used over years, over the past 50, 60 years, and yet we haven't seen a dramatic change in terms of what we are rather seeing is an escalation of the problem. Now, what we have also noticed from this report is that police crackdowns and other interventions associated with criminalization of drug use and possession also results in displacement of drug users from one area, from one area of service provision. So, for instance, if drug users are within a certain community where harm reduction services and programs are being implemented, because of police crackdowns and raids, it increases the likelihood of people being displaced. And once they are displaced, they are unable to access services. So for instance, those who inject drugs are unable to access clean needles to be able to engage in safe methods of using their drugs. And so that it's another obstacle when we talk about criminalization and its impact on the health of these people. Now, those who use drugs may avoid seeking medical attention for fear of the fact that information regarding their drugs use might be shared with some authorities, which could result in arrest, imprisonment, or treatment against their will. And so it is important that we begin to look at our policies and see where we can create an enabling environment to allow these people to be able to freely access or confront their challenges so that they can seek help. Because the more we continue to imprison people, people are afraid to open up on their problems or on their drug use problems to seek help. Now, criminalizing drug use also creates some kind of like social risks because society tends to see people who are engaged in drugs or people who have been convicted of drug offenses as unproductive and criminals. And we see that every day in our society, even the stigma. And we all know that stigma can lead to a lot of discrimination, including reduced support for health-led responses. So it is important that we begin to look at our drug policies in a more progressive manner because prohibitionism runs counter to our development, our sustainable development, and it makes it much harder for us to be able to meet the sustainable development goals. And so we need to ensure that drug policies and the Agenda 2030 are coherent. Now, if you look at the sustainable development goals, for instance, I will want to limit more of my conversation to goal 1 and goal 3. Now, let's look at, in terms of goal 3, which talks about the fact that we need to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. Now, if you look at the 3 international conventions that underpins our international drug control system, the main aim is to provide humankind's, improves one's health and welfare. Now, poverty and ill health forms a vicious cycle, especially when it comes to issues or discussions around people engagement in drug trade or drug cultivation and use. Now, current drug policies are what current drug policies have done over time is that it has reinforced this cycle of increasing the risks of health and harms, limiting access to medical care for people who use drugs. But for the entire communities, by overly restricting them from accessing these essential medicines that they need a lot of the time to be able to address a lot of the challenges. So it is important that we reconsider our policies and begin to discuss them vis-a-vis the sustainable development goals, because I have over the period heard at conferences, training, regional workshops and all that about the need to have Africa free of HIV/AIDS. We talk about the need to be able to eradicate poverty by the year 2020. But I keep asking myself this question: how can we achieve this when a key important group of people are left behind in the conversation and not even considered within these parameters. That will mean that we cannot achieve these objectives or these goals if we continue to criminalize this group of people or leave them behind because we do not want to bring them in that space of giving them the opportunity to be able to access health services. So it is important that as legislators and as this conversation is going on, and also as we move towards the 2030 agenda with the slogan, leave no one behind, policymakers, legislators, all the people who matter in bringing that change, in achieving that, the sustainable development goal by the year 2020, we begin to implement policies that can help us realize these goals and achieve them more effectively. We also have to ensure that drug policy truly aligns with a number of the international and regional instruments. And there's also the need for us to ensure that they are enshrined within the Sustainable Development Goal framework. And that will require governments to respect the 6 essential elements of the SDGs. And that should underpin any future response to our drug policy. And basically, when I talk about the 6 essential framework or elements, I'm talking about the fact that they must be justice-based, they must be people-centered, it must be dignity-oriented, and then solidarity-based partnership. And I believe that by doing so, we will be able to address a lot of these challenges. Over time, we have heard that people who engage in the drug trade or are cultivating drugs, plants, these psychoactive substances, are basically doing so because of wealth and because of greed. But clearly, we can see that that is not the case in this particular instance, or even in the region. That is not the case, because now we see a lot of small-scale African farmers who have resorted to growing cannabis, for instance, for sustainability, just to be able to survive and take care of their families. For example, in South Africa, for instance, cannabis production among small-scale farmers has provided some kind of level of food security due to it being low maintenance and easily transportable to significant places. And of course, there's a profitable market for such a crop. So it's not as if a lot of these people are engaging in crop production purposely because they want to get wealthy or it's out of greed. But of course, the evidence over time has shown us that many of these people live in abject poverty, and they are just looking for means and ways of having some kind of sustainability, to be able to have livelihood that they can give some support for their families. So in fact, we have to begin to not just focus on alternative livelihoods, but we should be looking at sustainable livelihood, giving these people some sustainable livelihood. How do we do so? So of course, the current trend or the current policies that are looking at more of market elimination, crop eradication, isn't helpful, because many of these farmers, especially where you have aerial spraying, crops are destroyed, water bodies are destroyed, even cash crops are also destroyed as a result of this aerial spraying and all that, because there isn't these are done indiscriminately, and that destroys and has a lot of health implications on already poor communities that are trying to survive. It is also important for us to begin to break the silos. You know, we have always treated these two subject matters as two different things. But of course, they are interrelated. And of course, for us to be able to achieve one, we need to work on the other by moving towards a certain direction. And of course, drug policy reform can only change this picture by contributing to achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. What we also need to do is to increase interest and involvement of our legislators, especially key actors like development partners in this space, and more importantly, civil society actors in the discourse of drug policy. And I believe that we also need to rethink the way in which development connects with drug policy by moving from alternative development to more of sustainable development. Because of time, I will want to pause here. As and when questions come in, I will be available to respond to these questions. Thank you very much once again for this opportunity to share my experience, understanding in terms of the work I do in the region around drug policy. I look forward to a fruitful engagement, and I will remain here for further questions and deliberations. Thank you very much.